Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? Derek Carr was introduced to the New Orleans Saints over the weekend. I'm very interested. Could you play number one, please? Derek Carr, his feelings coming to New Orleans.
You know, this really is a dream come true moment for me, and the warmth and the love that I felt, from the city of New Orleans, Mrs. Benson, Mickey, DA, the whole organization, the whole city has been unbelievable.
Now, one of the really interesting questions moving forward, with Carr now in tow, is what happens with Michael Thomas? Because Michael Thomas, we all know, when the Carr news broke last Monday, tweeted thank you, Jesus. There's certainly been a lot of reports about the possibility of Michael Thomas remaining in New Orleans under a new contract. We all know he will not be under his former contract. There's just no chance. The Saints aren't going to pay him the roster bonus he would be due at the start of the league year. So tear that up, sign him to a new deal. If it works out, great. Here was Derek Carr's thoughts on the possibility of Michael Thomas returning to the Saints and his relationship with the Saints wide receiver.
In the recent has been the most we've talked. Obviously, as players, we know each other and have a respect and all those kind of things, right? And you have a lot of those relationships throughout the year. But me and Mike, we've gotten close through this process and talking. And the first time I talked to him on the phone, I don't think he wanted me to get off the phone. I really enjoyed talking to him. And I told Mickey, I was like, you talk to Mike Thomas, and you feel like you two could go out there and face the world. I told my wife when I got off the phone, and she was like, why are you smiling? I was like, I love this guy. He's so competitive. And I think just the energy that he brings, it would be very exciting times to throw him the football for sure. So when he started recruiting and talking to me and all that, he wouldn't even try and recruit me. He's just like, hey, when are we getting to work? We're wasting time. Time's ticking. And I was like, yeah, I feel the same way. We'll get there. But, I think that our relationship has grown through this process, and I look forward to hopefully making that relationship grow even stronger.
That certainly sounds like a guy who is intended on being back in New Orleans next year. And I want to be clear. I am perfectly fine with Michael Thomas being in New Orleans next year. I'm not okay with Michael Thomas being in New Orleans under his former contract. We all understand that. And that's just not, after the way they restructured it, that's just not a realistic possibility. But if you want to tear that thing up and sign a new deal, an incentive-laden deal, okay, I'm good with that. And I don't even need Michael Thomas to be my number one. I just need him to be available and productive. I got my number one with Chris Olave. But if Thomas can be my number two or number three, okay, great. Now, how the rest of that room shakes out will be interesting to see. We did see this news. It was Jeremy Fowler from ESPN who had it first, that the Saints are not going to tender Marquez Callaway. So, Marquez Callaway, it's an interesting situation because 2 seasons ago, when Thomas was injured and everything went wrong for you, Marquez Callaway, as an undrafted rookie free agent, became your number one wide receiver. In 2021, Callaway had 698 receiving yards and 6 touchdowns, becoming your leading receiver. But Fowler had the news. The Saints not expected to tender wide receiver Marquez Callaway. Returning to New Orleans is still an option, but he'll hit unrestricted free agency. Now, to be clear, a restricted free agent tender would cost a fully guaranteed $2.627 million against the cap this year. So basically, if they tendered Callaway, he would be guaranteed a minimum of $2.6 million. The Saints, I think, are effectively looking at this saying, yeah, we think we can get you for less than that. Now, if you want to go hit free agency and there's a bigger market for you, cool. Or maybe you sign into a multi-year deal that's structured such that it makes sense for New Orleans to where a restricted free agent tender doesn't. Now, the challenge with this is that if Marquez Callaway hits unrestricted free agency and does not return to New Orleans, you're not going to get anything for him, not even a compensatory draft pick if you sign somewhere else. So That's why that would be the benefit of tendering him. So now the Saints go into this offseason right now where you've got Chris Olave and a whole lot of question marks. Jarvis Landry is going to hit free agency, and it certainly doesn't seem like the Saints are interested in re-signing Jarvis. Michael Thomas could be back, but at what deal? Marquez Callaway could be back, but at what deal? You see the point we're getting at here? Now you're looking at the guys you do have under contract, which are Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, who had a very nice rookie year, Traquan Smith, gagged me with a sweaty tube sock, Kirk Merritt, Kawan Baker, and Keith Kirkwood. Those are the receivers you have under contract. You've got to get somebody competent with production in their career on this roster. So you're going to have to go find somebody in veteran free agency. Maybe it's re-signing Marquez Callaway and Michael Thomas, to where Thomas maybe is your 2, Callaway's your 3. Rashid Shaheed could be your 4, or maybe Shaheed has a blow-up year and moves up that. In whatever way I could say, those as your 4 receivers, your first 4, and then maybe one of the other guys, if it's Baker or Kirkwood or Merritt or someone like that, maybe Traquan because they seem to love him. I don't know why. But there's your 5. But you've got to address receiver in free agency. Thomas and Callaway could potentially be those guys, but otherwise you're looking somewhere in free agency to spend on receiver. A place the Saints have already spent now that we know is at tight end. And over the weekend, you probably saw the news, but Juwan Johnson has signed a 2-year contract extension with the New Orleans Saints. That is phenomenal news. I love what Juwan Johnson means. By the way, his agent, AJ Vaynerchuk from Vayner Sports, tweeted the news first. Juwan and his wife shared the news on social media as well, but AJ Vaynerchuk tweeted congratulations to Juwan Johnson on his 2-year deal for 2023 and 2024. So Juwan Johnson's back in New Orleans. My hope for Juwan is that with Derek Carr, he's able to. I don't know if he's going to achieve the level of production that Darren Waller did, but that has to be the idea, right? Is you've got this big target who's a really good pass-catching tight end who looks more like a receiver than a traditional tight end, but can be productive. So Juwan Johnson, this past year, was your second leading receiver. Chris Olave was your leading receiver. Juwan Johnson was your second leading pass catcher. 65 receptions for 508 yards. Now, Kamara had more receptions, but fewer yards. If you're just going by yards. Olave had 1,042. Juwan Johnson was second on the team. And it's no secret that for as long as this era of Saints football has existed, they have prioritized a pass-catching tight end. Go back to Jeremy Shockey. From Shockey, we know it was Jimmy Graham. That ended as it did with the trade to Seattle. And the Saints have been struggling to find that guy ever since. They spent big on Kobe Fleener from the Colts in free agency. Didn't work out. They brought back Ben Watson. He was just late in his career, but was obviously a productive player. They brought in Jared Cook. God bless Jared Cook. He essentially cost Drew Brees his career with the fumble in the divisional round playoff game against Tampa. They drafted Adam Troutman. And Troutman at times has shown flashes. It just hasn't materialized. And then there's Juwan Johnson, the guy who they've been searching for. Might well be this guy who was at Penn State and then Oregon as a big-bodied receiver who they put on some weight, turned him into a tight end, and he might just be that perfect flex, big-bodied tight end, and they're investing 2 more years into him. And if, as a young guy like he is, if Juwan Johnson is able to produce over the next 2 seasons, or even after this year, maybe you tear up that contract and sign him to a longer-term deal. But you're talking about a guy who's 26 years old, man. Who's 26 years old, who's exactly the productive receiver you've been looking for in that tight end spot. Now you bring in a guy like Carr, who has maximized a pass-catching tight end in Darren Waller, and then let us not forget Foster Moreau as well. I like it a lot. I like bringing back Juwan Johnson an awful lot because it's a relatively low cost for a potential big gain and big payoff if he's able to produce and increase his production over the next 2 years. So Marquez Callaway, Saints will not extend a restricted free agent tender. He'll become an unrestricted free agent, could return to New Orleans. But then, of course, Juwan Johnson has signed a 2-year deal with New Orleans, so he'll be back with the Saints. And I love that decision. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.